Right, thank you very much for staying with us. You are in the right place in Matters Sport. It is some 49 minutes past 2 p.m. Time is surely flying, but we have you covered. Now, for the particular topic that we are discussing today, and as promised, joining us for that particular conversation is Milton Nyakundi. Before we even start, let's get to hear from you as the viewer. Do you support the FIFA's ban on Kenya to all international activities? Do you support FIFA's decision, to ban Kenya from all international competitions? Continue to talk to us at KUTV Kenya, at KUTV_Kenya. That's on Twitter. Now, on Thursday night, the Kenyan sporting fraternity received some heartbreaking news that the football governing body FIFA had banned not only Kenya but also Zimbabwe from all international competitions. Now, in a letter addressed to the General Secretary of the disbanded Football Kenya Federation, that is Mr. Barry Otieno, the letter was written by the Secretary General of FIFA, that is Fatma Samura. FIFA had noted that the lifting of the suspension will be subject to the following conditions. The first one is the repeal of the CS's decision of appointing a caretaker committee, and also confirmation that the disbanded FKF management had regained full control. So what next for Kenyan football? Now, joining us to debunk on that is Milton Nyakundi. He is a sports journalist. He is also a communications expert. He is also a legal expert. And thank you very much, Milton Nyakundi, via Zoom. If you can hear me, Milton.
Yes, I can hear you, Stanley, and thank you for having me.
Okay, thank you. Now, let's start with first things first. Wherever you are, and whenever the time that you had this particular news, what was your reaction to it? That we have been banned by FIFA. What was your reaction?
First of all, it was rather shocking that because as far as I'm concerned, the Kenyan situation did not guarantee sanctions or suspension for FIFA, for the reason that we have national laws in place that govern the practice and conduct of sport, which those are not in conflict with the FIFA statute. So, for children alone, I was taken aback. But I also said that I was not surprised, because FIFA being they are, I respect where they're coming from, and it then calls that people now have to think about how to deal with unlocking the situation. But for me, I maintain that whereas I respect FIFA and FIFA's right to make the decision, I do not agree with it. I do not think it was necessary, but it is what it is, and now to live with the issue as it stands.
Right, and now FIFA gave us two particular options and two conditions, and just for clarity of it, I will read them aloud. The repeal of the Cabinet Secretary's decision on 11th November 2021 appointing the Caretaker Committee in lieu of the elected FKF Executive Committee. That is the first, that is the first condition, basically. Then the next one is FIFA's receipt of confirmation from the FKF and its management, led by VP Doris Petra and General Secretary Barry Otieno, that the FKF and its premises are once more under the full and unconditional control. From where you sit right now, Milton, do you think that these particular conditions will be met, and do you also support these particular conditions?
First of all, it's absurd that FIFA is giving conditions about the reinstatement of the former officials and the reopening of the FKF Secretariat, for the simple reason that one, there is due process that has been followed, and there is criminal there is active investigations going on about possible criminal liability of the officials, disbanded officials. Now, I go further and say this: the former president of the federation, Mr. Mwendwa, has been charged in court, and case is going on. The pre-trial process is already done, and the trial begins, I think, around 5th of July. And I am also aware from my seat that officials of the national executive, including the vice president, Madam Petra, and Mr. Barry Otieno, are, have been summoned, and they have recorded statements with the criminal investigative agencies of the Republic of Kenya. Therefore, for the condition by FIFA that they have to be reinstated, I find it absurd. And honestly, it shouldn't be, because you have to go back to 2015 to see what happened when the U.S. Department of Justice raided FIFA, under the racketeering law of the United States. And even as recently as last year, when the Swiss prosecutor was dealing with issues to do with inappropriate contact by the FIFA president with certain authorities, and during that time, the FIFA house, as is the case with Kandanda House at the moment, is a casino. So you're not going to open, the secretariat to the former secretariat officials led by Barry Otieno, where there is active investigations going on, when there are tons and volumes of documents that are being perused by the investigators at Kandanda House. So I think I find it rather absurd. Also find it something of a grandstanding by FIFA, when the spirit, the letter and spirit of the FIFA statutes, as is the case with the Kenyan law, is that they both stand for friendly relations. They both have zero tolerance to corruption. Accountability and integrity are at the heart of the two legal instruments. So I think, for me, from where I sit, I don't see how practical it is for FIFA to demand for honestly believe. I have indicated in my statement, which I released early this morning, last night and early this morning, that first of all, as evidence of goodwill and commitment to unlocking this impasse, we need to have, the respect and appreciation that the instruments upon which the government is relying and the legal instruments upon which FIFA are relying are not in conflict, and therefore both sides need to drop those conditions and engage in open mind. And the centrality of those engagements must be driven by the best interest of Kenyan football.
Indeed, and Milton, before you even continue, and to just read your statement in your way forward per se, and you're saying, if I can quote it, the government through the Ministry of Sports and FIFA to recognize the imperative need for collaboration born out of strategic, open and focused engagement with Kenyan football. And this won't be the first time that FIFA is flexing its own powers. We saw that FIFA also flexed its own powers with the Ivory Coast Football Federation. Now, and they introduced the Normalisation Committee. Nyakundi, where you sit, do you think that this is something that we as Kenya need, or it's something that we should have used a long time ago?
I want to say it categorically, without fear of contradiction, that again, I've seen comparison with the situation in Ivory Coast and others, and even the case of Kenya in 2004 and 2006. There is a very big difference between those, cases that are being put out. Well, first of all, is that we have a national in the Sports Act that governs the conduct of sports in this country called Kenya. The same cannot be said about the other jurisdictions that are being cited. And therefore, where is the place of the question that we must all ask ourselves and be alive to, and which I implore FIFA to appreciate, is that we have a national law in Kenya. And when in a situation where you have a national law, then what is the pecking order in terms of application of the law or the legal instrument we want to speak to. Now, we have a ruling from the High Court in application for judicial review number 100 of 2020, where the High Court determined that even when there is allowance and respect for FIFA statutes to be applied in jurisdiction of the Republic of Kenya, they do not take precedence over Kenyan law because they do not form part of international treaty or conventions that are ratified as part of Kenyan law under Article 2.6 of the Constitution. That being the case, what then is the best way to deal with this? Is for FIFA to appreciate that we have a national law in place, which law any body that FIFA would recognize its member association under Article 11 of its statutes, they must have complied with the national law. In our case, it is the Sports Act. So when the custodian of that authority says that FKF in the present formation, in its current circumstances, has failed to comply with that national law, then it follows that the FKF that FIFA insists it wants to recognize has fallen short of that requirement of Article 11 of the FIFA statutes. Upon such appreciation, FIFA would then engage with the government and other stakeholders to establish how this member of theirs called Football Kenya Federation would be compliant with the national law. Upon that plan, then it becomes automatic that FKF would be a member of FIFA. So the point I'm making here is that the Normalisation Committee that FIFA calls normalization under Article 8.2 of its statute is the same committee that Kenyan law under Section 54 of the Sports Act envisaged. Just a question of the common denominator there is that they are both committees, but it is the wording that then is the issue. So I'm saying, and I've shared this for free to Kenyans and the government, that there is no harm if the would gazette the Caretaker Committee as a normalization committee and include membership or representation from FIFA, and have an addendum to the Gazette notice of 12 November 2021, and have this normalization committee so that it concludes its mandate within the 6-month period. I see no harm, because we are likely to be in a situation where FIFA would insist on having a normalization committee beyond this month envisaged by the Sports Act. That will already be axis on its own. There is no reason why FIFA cannot send representation to the what already government has started. Right. And that process is concluded by May 11th. Indeed. For the good of Kenyan football.
All right, Nyakundi, if we may just interrupt you briefly and for clarity, even for viewers, do you support and do you think that right now the Caretaker Committee should be disbanded and the former disbanded FKF officials to be reinstated, for clarity?
I mean, there are two issues here. For me, it's not about whether or not the Caretaker Committee should be disbanded. The question is, what is the legal mandate of this Caretaker Committee, and how long does it take place? We would be naive to imagine the fact that this committee was already gazetted 4 months ago, 4 months ago, that now we can disband it and start the process all over again. Where we be standing to make this decision? So the point we have to be alive to, and this is what I have been insisting on, is that let FIFA engage with objectivity, with sincerity, without any legal influence either the government and FIFA are acting on. Upon that appreciation, then this question of that the Caretaker Committee should be disbanded, will have agreement based on mutual respect, based on appreciation of the legal identity of either the government or FIFA. Otherwise, I mean, this looks like this is going to look like a contest of power, and you know, Kenya is a sovereign state, FIFA is not.
Indeed, and where you sit right now, for somebody who is watching this and they're wondering, okay, fine, FIFA has banned, you know, Kenya from participating in any international activities, but then what does this really mean for Kenya? And the main questions that even going through Twitter, people were asking, you know, for the international players who are, you know, playing out there, and even for players who are going to be signed to the international scene, what does this mean really for them?
First of all, players who are already playing in other countries will not be affected unless they are moving from their current clubs to other clubs outside of those respective countries. So those ones are not going to be affected. Let us not be delusional about it. Those speaking like that are alarmists and people who want to make this look so bad against our players. Unfortunately, for players who are prospectively or potentially being signed by other clubs in Kenya, that may not be possible for them to move for the duration of the suspension period, and that is really unfortunate. But we have to ask ourselves what pride there is in us having a federation that is being led by officials who are on the radar of corruption, who are facing charges of you know, bad governance and situations like that. Even FIFA, when it had this situation in 2015, Blatter had to go, Jerome Valke had to go, several other people. What is so special with these officials in our case, led by Nick Mwendwa and Doris Petra? What is so special about them that they have to be forced to be in office for FKF to be part of the international community of football under FIFA? That is a question that we must ask ourselves. Integrity and good governance, accountability, and such other principles or tenets of good governance are principles that we uphold, and Article 73 of Articles 10 and 73 of our Constitution, and the same are you know, to be found in Articles 2, 5, 6, and 7 of the first statute. So really, let us not tell IMCs that FIFA needs to come down the tower. There is no law that be violated, and there is no interference. And I want to say, for the record, FIFA as an international NGO has no capacity, has no mandate to investigate or prosecute matters of criminal nature, even within their own organization. If there are questions of criminal nature, they only invite the government of Switzerland, or outside government of Switzerland, because maybe of the international nature of those crimes, they will work with Interpol and the respective agencies of soft states. Let them not, and I say this without fear of contradiction, Stanley, FIFA not pretend that they are going to prosecute or investigate the crimes or alleged crimes that have been committed at Kandanda House. It is only sovereign state like Kenya that has the instruments and the institutions that can do those investigations.
All right, thank you.
I would plead this point that FIFA allows
Nyakundi briefly
of Kenyan and international go on.
Okay, Nyakundi.
And insulate the institution of FKA from those shenanigans.
Nyakundi, briefly, as we also wrap up that particular FIFA ban, briefly, How long do you think the government, because right now in my own knowledge, FIFA, basically the Ministry of Sports has not, responded to this, to Fatma Samura's letter for you personally, and because you have been following this particular, story, you were in the courts during the Nyakundi's case. How long do you think the government will take to respond to this particular letter?
For the record, and I don't want to pretend to be holding brief for the government, but for the record, I want to reiterate that I see the Secretary government for how they have handled this matter. There is no urgency in government coming out with a response to that letter. There is a lot of consultations that deep into this. There is a lot of, research that needs to go into this before a government can make a decision.
Okay.
For the avoidance of doubt, government does speak in vain, and I don't see why. There should be, I know there is anxiety, and that is why some of us are here to give our opinion, voice our expertise in terms of what we think should be the way forward. But for the government, it is in order that the CS is taking her time, is probably consulting as widely as possible before making known what should be the official position of government in terms of the way forward. So I urge for patience, I would call for calm among Kenyans and the football fraternity in Africa and beyond. Kenya is a serious member of the international community of nations. Kenya is one of the members, one of the presidents of the UN Security Council, and therefore we will not just be in a hurry to speak about a matter of this importance just like that. There has to be deep consultations before the government position can be made known. And I wish to remind FIFA and many others.
Indeed. Nyakundi.
We are not going to be in a hurry to do this because Kenya is at the heart of our interest.
Okay, Nyakundi, allow me to interrupt you on that, and let's wrap up the whole FIFA ban topic. You are vying for the Football Kenya Federation president, and the FKF Caretaker Committee has already started the whole process in consultation with the IEBC on matters that particular elections for the FKF. Why should you as Milton Nyakundi be the right man for the job?
I am the right man because, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak about my aspiration for FKF presidency when the time is right. That process is already underway. I want to say that first and foremost, I believe I am the right person for the job for the reason that I have the purpose and the passion. I have been agitating for Kenyan football for the longest time, not because I had interest, but because I believe in the potential of Kenyan football. But beyond that, I would want to assure the football fraternity that mine is an agenda for Kenyan football, and is a 7-point agenda to help, get our football take off and found it properly for its future development. And I am alive to the fact that I will be in office for 2 terms of 4 years each. That is 8 years, but I will lay the foundation, first of all, for proper corporate governance, because that is what we've learned. And I also lay a foundation for players' welfare, for development of capacity in terms of coaching, in terms of technical areas of the game, in terms of administration, so that by the time I am leading a strong secretariat that will be able to continue with our national football development plan, which will be a 30-year plan to develop our game, so that whoever comes will find a stable secretary, will find a plan that is already in progress, and for all that can only happen when you have a president of the federation that has no baggage from the past, that has no integrity questions around him, that has questions about what he believes in. I have a record of standing for a cause, as opposed to just being in a presidential race because I see an opportunity. The reason I have thrown my name into the ring is for the simple fact that if you look around, there is nobody that represents the aspirations of the Kenyan football family. All the people that are presenting themselves have been there in the past, done nothing, left, and now they want to masquerade as the new sheriffs in town. Yet we know that they had the opportunity and they never did as much as they want to promise us right now. I mean, you can only sweep a room better with a new broom. You cannot use an old broom to sweep a room better when the same old broom has been doing a bad job. So that Indeed. Is just a summary, but I hope that we will have an opportunity for me to elaborate on my manifesto and what I stand for Kenyan football. And for the record, by the way, Stanley, I will be the first candidate to have a proper manifesto for our football in the history of the game. We've not had anybody who's coming out and saying, this is how I want you to judge me. This is how I want you to ask me questions about what I am doing and why I am coming in as the next president of the Football Kenya Federation.
Briefly, as we also conclude this particular conversation, you're coming into a seat that is mad with controversy, office in, office out. And briefly, please, Mr. Nyakundi, as we wrap up this because of time, does this scare you? Does this scare you, the fact that you're entering into an office that is mad with controversy? And there's also, you answer that particular question, your advice to the sports ministry and specifically the cabinet secretary of sports, Ambassador Amina Mohammed.
I have to be honest and confess at this point that a lot of my friends actually say they don't envy me once I get into office. But let me say, first of all, to answer you straight, I am not scared of the challenge. And the fact that this is a muddy situation, I'm getting into a federation that has been run down, an in-tray that is so full and there's a lot of rotten filth, that in itself is my motivation. That in itself is what gives me the passion and the drive to say, I have a purpose, and the purpose today, the purpose is to get in there and do something. If it was all smooth and easy, then I would have no reason to come in. I would probably sit pretty and do my job as as a communications person, as a journalist, and still earn my livelihood. But the fact that it is a mess tells me, Milton, this is where you need to step up and show what you can do. If we want to get in because it is all smooth, then we are probably the wrong people for the job. I am saying that when instead my activism against the bad governance and the poor administration of Ndua in 2018, a lot of the people were scared. They said, why am I getting myself into the mud? A lot of colleagues in the fourth estate did not believe that I was ready to do this. But 4 years later, here we are, and Nick Mwendo is out of office and is facing justice for alleged mismanagement and corruption. So who knew that Milton Nyakundi would succeed? Even when he sued me in the case that was determined dismissed by Justice Makau on 14th of October last year, paving way for what has happened, the inspection and everything else. Actually, nobody knew that I was going to win that case. Nobody knew that I had the capacity to stand the fight in that court. Representing myself against the senior agenda.
All right, Nyakundi, just briefly before you also tell us your last advice to the sports ministry. Nick Mwendo has not resigned officially, and the elections are pending. Just briefly, this is a question actually on our Facebook page. What if Nick Mwendo does not resign?
Let us not believe. There is nothing as resignation. The moment the CS invoked Section 54(2) of the Sports Act, which is, almost a cut and paste of Article 8(2) of the FIFA statutes, it is not a question of him resigning. It is already done and dusted, and the sooner people appreciate the power of enacted law, then the better for us. And even FIFA is in denial by saying that they accept the so-called transfer of power from the former president to former vice president Doris Petra, it is in denial, which lies the fact that the sanctity of enacted law cannot be undermined by an administrative letter. An act of parliament is sacred. You may not agree with, but the moment it has been enacted, you are bound by it. So the moment it's applied, the moment it is invoked, let us not be in denial. I want to say, and in response to you, my advice to the Ministry of Sports and the government and the Kenyan fraternity at large.
Yes,
my
please, and make it
is
brief.
That let us for once appreciate and recognize that we are acting under an act of parliament. We are acting on the rule of law. What I am saying is that people need to come out down the ivory tower, that is both FIFA and where government has had, although I doubt government has done anything like being on an ivory tower. Let us put the laws of the land and the FIFA statutes on the table, see where they are applicable. Let us not try to defend people who are facing allegations of corruption and mismanagement. Let the judicial justice system deal with the criminal justice system, deal with individuals. But for now, it is not Kenyan fall under trial. I expect that FIFA will act by the spirit of the last paragraph of that letter from Fatma Samura to say that they are at the disposal of Kenyan authorities in dealing with the matters beforehand. So I hope that we are going to have a delegation from Zurich as soon as possible, and government will be ready to host them, and we as stakeholders will be given the chance to voice our concerns and our position, so that it is Kenyan football that ultimately wins. This grandstanding by former officials of FKF and their sympathizers is not going to help the youth that they are saying are going to suffer. It will only make it worse. For me, as a stakeholder, I want to come to office. I want to come to office as soon as possible so that I can begin the cleanup. This kind of stiff-neck grandstanding doesn't help my quest. And I promise Kenyans that I will deliver.
All right, thank you.
For the Kenyan youth, for Kenyan football. Because if I don't, I am ready to come out and say I will not be like my predecessors who were not willing to leave. I will say this thing is too heavy for me. I am leaving it.
Indeed.
But I am not about to say that. I will deliver, and I promise Kenyans on this stage that I will do so.
That he will do so. Thank you very much, Milton Nyakundi. He is a football stakeholder. He's a sports journalist. He is a legal advisor. We were discussing on matters of the football, the FIFA ban on Kenya and what its implications is, the way forward for Kenya. And we'll obviously be right here at KUTV. We'll obviously be telling you everything about it. If the sports ministry, gives a reaction and a response to the Fatma Samura's letter, we'll obviously be letting you know. Right now, we have to take a short break. We'll be right back. And before we actually go to the break, let's keep talking to us at KUTV Kenya, at KUTV_Kenya on Twitter for that particular conversation. What do you think, and what is your reaction? Do you support FIFA's ban on Kenya? In all international competitions, do you support that particular ban? Keep talking to us on that particular story. Obviously, for our weekly Street Talk segment, we'll obviously you'll get to hear what some Kenyans had to